It's clear and obvious the law enforcement community doesn't want me on the street due to my past. I feel like calling the board hypocrites right now because the board asks that people have empathy. Is a mistake I will never make again in life. I will never call for help. Got out of a gang, got a law degree. Regardless of the situation, I can see that I'm going to be the bad guy. If I was anybody else in the entire world, I would be free. Daniel Walter Collins the first, right?
We are about to watch the parole hearing of a Utah man who has a jacket full of crimes that we will go over. But what he's known for is what he did to his chomo, Celli. He stabbed him, this man, over 25 times, and he was ultimately convicted of essaying his 16-year-old babysitter. I'll unpack with all those details at the end.
Is that on record?
Yep.
Okay. This is a rescission hearing for Simon Scown, number 154632. Is that you, sir?
It is.
My name's Scott Manning. I'm a hearing officer with the Board of Pardons and Parole. I'll be conducting today. I'm going to be taking testimony from you. If you'd raise your right hand the best you can, I'll swear you in. Do you swear that the testimony you provide today will be truthful and accurate?
I do.
Thank you. Did you receive at least 7 days written notice of today's hearing along with your blue disclosure packet?
I did.
So that's the new information, obviously, that the board will be considering. I'm just going to kind of give a procedural review, and then I'll ask you if there's anything in that disclosure you want to talk about. So the purpose of today's hearing is to discuss why your parole date was rescinded. It was rescinded, I believe, due to new disciplinaries. There is a criminal charge pending related to one of those incidents. I think an initial appearance, at least as of yesterday, was scheduled for a week from today, is what's happened. After today's hearing, the board will decide appropriate action. I imagine almost certainly that will be a paper review due to the criminal charges that are the criminal charge that is pending. We'll go over that in just a minute. But I would like to talk about the other new information outside that, so that when the board is presented with an opportunity to make a decision, they have the information available. So to the extent you're willing to do that, I'd like to. But did you receive, you said you received your blue disclosure packet as well?
I did.
Are there any errors or inaccuracies you'd like to discuss in that packet before we proceed?
I mean, no.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like there probably is, but none that I want to discuss.
Okay, if something comes to mind, that's really the main purpose of why we're here. I've reviewed your file. I have a detailed report prepared, but part of today's hearing is to allow you to speak and to voice things from your perspective. So since returning from your most recent parole, I think the board has granted and then rescinded 3 paroles. You're familiar with, what happened in each of those cases. Since the most recent hearing, it was in May of 2024. I think there's 4 incidents leading to disciplinary convictions. And then last time I checked, I believe yesterday afternoon, 3 were pending. So the criminal charge, assault by peace officer related to the July 5th, 2024 incident, that's pending in case 2419-10862. What's that?
Which, the write-up was actually dismissed.
Yeah, so it shows as a conviction on my end. I can double check and look and see if something wasn't.
There was a conviction of a disorderly conduct.
So I show an A21 assault against correctional officer, B13 disorderly conduct, reckless endangerment. I'll check. I'll go look at the IDHO information. If that has indeed been dismissed, I'll change it so the board has accurate information. Is that okay with you?
Yes, the A21 was dismissed. The B13 I pled guilty to.
Okay. Well, I'm also going to recommend the board take judicial notice of that pending case 2419-10862, the misdemeanor A assault on a peace officer. Due to the pending case, I'm not going to ask you any questions.
To me.
What's that?
And this is why I don't. It's absolutely flabbergasting to me, the whole situation. And conveniently, this officer was not wearing a body camera during the time of a verbal exchange, which he claims at which time I threatened his life and his family. And yet this gentleman was provocative, even to the point of providing his full name, Daniel Walter Collins the First. Right. So I don't. It is very convenient. This gentleman was not wearing a body camera, and again, this write-up was dismissed. Honestly, I find this to be absolutely ridiculous. But I've been down 21 months on technical violations, disciplinaries, and misdemeanor infractions. So if I was anybody else in the entire world, I would be free. Let's just go ahead and say that outright. And that essentially the problems I've had in the last 2 years have stemmed from being incarcerated, and that the reason I'm incarcerated is because I called for help for somebody who has overdosed, which is a mistake I will never make again in life. I will never call for help for anybody. I will never call the police again in life for any reason, because regardless of the situation, I can see that I'm going to be the bad guy. And, the things I've done in the last 5 years, 6 years, that would be mitigating or beneficial, I don't feel they get acknowledged in any way by the Board of Pardons.
What are
So
those
kind of at this
in your
point
opinion?
of just not caring.
What are the mitigating factors in your opinion, so I can put them in my report?
Got out of a gang, got a law degree, went to therapy, have provided the Board of Pardons both drug and alcohol and mental health assessments. Numerous things. Work.
You have a
Got my
law
own
degree? You
place.
got a law
Got-
degree in the prison, or was that on parole?
in the prison.
In the
I
prison,
got
law
a degree, but on my own dime through correspondence.
Okay. And sorry to cut you off. If you'd like to add more.
I'm just saying, like, despite the fact that it took me 6 years to get off gang file, I left my gang, got off gang file. The board still comes at me with gang paroles. To me, that's not acknowledging any kind of progress. To me, that's the opposite. To me, that's saying your progress doesn't matter and the things you do don't matter. I've provided evidence that I was receiving MAT treatment and going to therapy on the street, substance abuse therapy. And yet I don't see any recognition of that. I have not felt any recognition from the board. In fact, I don't feel like I've received recognition from the board over basic human matters. I don't feel like I feel like calling the board hypocrites right now, because the board asks that people have empathy, right? That's a huge thing, is empathy for other people. And yet in my time of need, when I lost a child and a significant other of 8 years, someone who'd overdosed in my lap, I've been down 21 months. I haven't had a chance to grieve. I've got all this unprocessed grief and anger over this whole situation that has not been acknowledged in any way. And to me, that is a total lack of empathy. You would only treat a monster like that. You would only not acknowledge the death of someone's family member, that a child and their wife. It's beyond monstrous not to acknowledge that. And it's certainly a lack of empathy. And I'm at this place now where I am kind of just like, whatever. And the board are masters of making mountains out of molehills, because it's clear and obvious the law enforcement community doesn't want me on the street due to my past criminal history. And yeah, okay, I'm not following all the rules. Mm, I'm making minor mischief. Again, technical violations, disciplinary infractions, and misdemeanors have been the total of what has kept me incarcerated for the last 2 years.
We are at this point out of time. I do want to quickly note, I'm going to recommend the board take judicial notice of pending case 2419-10862.
Of course it will.
We didn't talk about there's also a June 11th, 2024 B13 disorderly, June 19th, 2024 B16 tattooing, then a June 29th, 2024 B02 fighting assault. Those were the convictions. There's a pending incident from August 25th, 2024, and a pending incident from September 3rd, 2024. At this point, what I'm going to do is take your case under advisement.
Covering my window and refusing a urinalysis are the pending ones. Yeah.
Yeah, the one says refuse a UA, the other covered window and cell. Looks like the CERT team responded because you refused an order. A search was conducted after that. There was the fighting. It looks like you were seen on camera punching another inmate in the main yard. The B16 tattooing, the officer walked past the cell. You and another inmate were tattooing at that time. The disorderly is actually very similar in nature to the pending criminal charge, so I won't bring that up with you as well. At this point, we're out of time. I'm going to, I think almost certainly the board will be setting a paper review to track the pending case. There's potential for a Board of Pardons jurisdiction over that case. So depending on the outcome, the board would take appropriate action. That could be set an original hearing. If Board of Pardons jurisdiction results, they could reach the disposition or the release decision. If no jurisdiction results, they could also schedule another hearing to talk about further issues if they'd like to. Anything else quickly you'd like to mention before we conclude?
Yeah, I wonder if giving me more time was a death sentence, if the Board of Pardons would care. I don't think they would. Have a great day.
Okay. Well, with that, we'll go ahead and conclude today's hearing.
Okay, so let's unpack this. And I want to go through the course of events. So who we just watched, Mr. Simon Russell, who I think kind of has a victim complex. He was initially locked up in 2011 for really a horrendous crime. He's not a good guy either. Okay, it was what he was charged with was, trying to restrict the airflow to his live-in girlfriend, put her against the wall, punched her. I mean, horrible stuff. Grabbed a gun, and so he got locked up for doing that, and it was in front of 2 children. So he's no prince. Now, while he was locked up, he got booked with this guy who also, what's interesting to this, they're in the same gang together. So they're in the same gang. He's booked with this guy. This guy is being held for SA of a 16-year-old babysitter who had died and who they killed, and he hid her body. Now, this story of what he did to her babysitter, this man here, who our Prince Simon Russell stabbed 25 times, he was ultimately found guilty and sentenced to life. But what he had done is he had hired the babysitter because he had his wife. They went out to party. They came back, injected the babysitter with meth and heroin, and claimed that his story was that the babysitter wanted to have a threesome, and that's why it was done intentionally. But he injected her 3 times. The amount that they found in her system was enough to kill an elephant or something. And they claimed that they were just partying and she OD'd and they panicked and they hid the body. The body was so decomposed that the coroner couldn't tell the cause of death. But his wife turned on him. The guy who helped him bury the body turned on him. They all pointed fingers, and he was found guilty. And I know all this because Sir Richard shared the podcast. This was a true crime thing. I listened to the podcast. It was. I'll put the link to that podcast in the description. But while he's serving in time for this, his Celli in the same game, who we just saw, stabs him 25 times. he was charged with first-degree attempted homicide. Now, Utah felt maybe they didn't care that much because just a few years later, maybe 5, 6 years later, on top of the charges already in his jacket, he got paroled. And he now came back. What we're seeing is after he got paroled, he is back now again and facing new charges, which is what they're waiting for. I hope you're following me. I know this is a bit busy, but he is now back. And that means that after he stabbed his roommate 25 times, his roommate is Celli, I'm sorry, I'm not using, shanked him 25 times, was able to still get parole even with everything in his jacket. And now, you know, what's interesting about this case, it does go through the details. Whoops. But I'll put the links in the description. I think I did a fine enough job with Sir Richard's help of calling this out. If you like these Utah parole hearings, check the Utah playlist. What we see in Utah more than any other state, because we cover 5 other states, is the violence is just a whole new level. The ink and where they put it all over the face is something we don't see in any of the other states. Utah is a prison you do not want to be locked up in. That's my takeaway. It is a dangerous, we cover Connecticut, we cover Louisiana, we cover Vermont, we cover Illinois, and Utah takes the cake by far, just from what we see. We see people come in with black and blue eyes for their parole hearings. Never seen that. We never seen that in 2,000 parole hearings in Louisiana. So it's something else. And make sure you subscribe, because we follow the inmates as they go through their parole journey. We've seen inmates sometimes 4 times over the course of 4 years. So make sure you subscribe and hit that bell notification. With that, I'll let you go.
It's clear and obvious the law enforcement community doesn't want me on the street due to my past. I feel like calling the board hypocrites right now, because the board asks that people have empathy is a mistake I will never make again in life. I will never call for help. Got out of a gang, got a law degree. Regardless of the situation, I can see that I'm going to be the bad guy. If I was anybody else in the entire world, I would be free. Daniel Walter Collins the first, right?